I'd now like to introduce the next speaker. And the next speaker is really also at the DeFi forefront. His name is Lex Sokolin, and he's the global FinTech head and also the head economist at ConsenSys, which is a leading provider of blockchain infrastructure for DeFi. Lex?
Hi, how's it going? Good to be here. Are we having a conversation, or am I riffing on a topic? I think I'm riffing on a topic.
Lex, you are riffing on ConsenSys, how it works, and the implications for the future of DeFi from your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a little bit about ConsenSys and its evolution, and then I'll share a journey that I've been on as it relates to kind of what's going on in the space. And I think it's really important to keep updating our own mental models as we do more and more work in the space. And, I think that's been kind of becoming more clear the further we go on the blockchain journey. So ConsenSys is at the heart of the crypto ecosystem in that it provides MetaMask, which is the primary crypto wallet that folks use to access Web3. About 30 million users these days, as well as a whole bunch of developer tools so that if you're writing software and you want some APIs to connect into nodes, you would use a bunch of our software. Or if you're setting up CBDCs or want an enterprise protocol, we're involved in all of that. And the journey of the company started out from sort of the creative explosion of lots and lots of projects coming onto Ethereum around 2016 and 2017. And that journey took it from being a venture studio and a big sort of manager of lots and lots of different positions to being much more focused on being a product company and figuring out, okay, how do we scale these things that seem to be repeatable, to really understanding the paradigm that we're in. And the paradigm that we're in not being an accident of a bunch of symptoms of like, oh, people want NFTs now, or look at all these finance people that want to trade crypto. Like, these are very narrow reads of what's actually going on, but rather a more macro and holistic story that's come out that I'll try to open up. I am I run the crypto economics team at ConsenSys, which means I take seriously the idea of applied microeconomics and standing up tokenized economies. I also spent a bit of time running the marketing team as well as our FinTech product platform. And so I've kind of touched both the community marketing side as well as the financial asset class side. And so I want to rewind a little bit in terms of the story and the persuasion that I think has drawn people into crypto and has drawn people of different types into crypto, and how it's been like this reinforcing loop. And so I think at the heart of it is the money story, and the money story is it's so exciting, the money story. It talks about politics, and it talks about sovereignty, and it talks about who gets who in which way is it fair or unfair to tax people in a certain way or run inflation in a certain way, and so on. So there's a lot of kind of political and almost like these existential social contract questions that go into the money story. And I think this is why the Bitcoin narrative is so infectious to people, because it really plugs into something in our lizard brain about power and fairness. And of course, that's part of the populist story more broadly, with sort of the reorientation of politics from kind of moderate left and right to populism versus institutionalism. But the money story runs out of steam because it turns a technological innovation into like a negotiation of power rather than appreciating the constant ingenuity and evolution of what people do with software and technology and tools. And so for me, I was I love Bitcoin. I think it's fantastic. Charlie Munger, eat your heart out. I think Bitcoin's fantastic, but for me, it wasn't that compelling to get me hooked. What really got me hooked is the idea of an evolution of computation. And so the evolution of computation, we can start in the warehouse, and then we can transition to the desktop computer in everyone's home, and then we can transition to the laptop, and then the internet server farms, the cloud Web 2 server farms, and then we can transition to computation happens in the cloud and all the software runs in the cloud and you just interface with it on your phone. And then the next computational paradigm being actually everybody runs computation on a node, and these nodes are everywhere, and they're structured in such a way as to generate a version of truth, a track record of truth and history that all computation agrees on, literally rendering a reality through advanced cryptography on which we all agree, not just agreeing on like this information is right, but literally on the course of history, we computationally agree on that. And then further, since you can place any software that you want into a Turing machine, into something that can render software and execute it, that means you can start eating all of the different industries and use cases that you can possibly imagine, because software is just tools, and tools is how people work and transact. So for me, I have a background in Wall Street and in FinTech, and I spent a bunch of time doing FinTech entrepreneurship and building out digital investing companies. And I had always this sort of disappointment about FinTech, in that it didn't seem to accomplish what a disruptive technology is supposed to accomplish, right? So putting on the sort of like anarchist hat, what you want to do is throw a brick through the window. You want to be the Napster to the music industry. You want to be the Google to the, you want to be the Amazon to the Walmart, or you want to be Google towards books and content and so on. You want to annihilate revenue pools by 50% and build completely different models and so on. And FinTech just wasn't able to do this. It shaved costs off here and there, but it didn't existentially challenge what it is that people were doing or how they were doing it. And I came to the realization, before I really even focused on crypto, that FinTech was all about distribution, right? So in most of the value chains, you have manufacturing, a factory that makes stuff, and then you have distribution, a store that sells stuff. And for finance, the manufacturing is the asset manager, or the bank with deposits, or the underwriter for lending, or the financial advisor for asset allocation. And then you've got the distribution. The distribution is, where is the thing sold? What's the store? So it's the bank branch, the financial advisor office, the ATM. And most of FinTech, not all, but most, at least in the sort of like Web 2 paradigm, has been to take distribution from a physical place, from a human place, and put it in the phone. And so you can be really reductive and talk about Square and Robinhood and lots of other very cool companies, and just say they put old financial products into the phone or the website. And it's the analogy is, you've got a Spotify of CD-ROMs, but that's not deeply existential. It's not deeply transformative. And part of that is because the manufacturing piece wasn't rendered digital. It wasn't rendered in a way that was somehow a step different from the past. And so I saw DeFi and blockchain and digital assets as a way to have financial services instruments, finance instruments that were digitally native. And so, the finance industry could undergo the same type of transformation that has happened in music and media and so on, which led me to join ConsenSys. But I think after having been there now through the DeFi and the NFT boom, that view is actually, it's a nice story and it's not wrong, but it is too narrow, and it misunderstands, again, the symptom and the cause. And so the key insight for me recently, especially having seen what's happened with commerce and NFT ownership and interest and so on, is the connection between an economy which has commercial activity and flows and so on, and finance, which is there to intermediate economic progress. And finance is an outgrowth. It's a mushroom that grows on the soil of the actual economy. And so it was a mistake to think that DeFi is an upgrade of our existing financial infrastructure, whereas it's actually something different. It is a reflection of timeless financial functions, financial patterns, pay, save, lend, and invest, insure, retire, whatever. That just happens to be growing out of a digital economy. That is happening to be growing out of an economy that's anchored to these computational blockchains, whether it's Ethereum or other layers that are attached to Ethereum. And you have to consider it specifically in the context of what it means to have digital objects and digital assets and lives in what people are referring to as the metaverse and Web3, and where the economic activity happens within blockchain-based infrastructures, in the same way that you have to, when you think about YouTube, the movie studio is entirely irrelevant and uninteresting. It's the creator economy that's interesting. It's the user-generated content that's interesting. And so similarly, to understand the space, you have to understand, why are people living in Web3? What are they doing there? How will they continue to do it? And what is their philosophy? And so I'll end on kind of this note, which is understanding the animating philosophy will explain to you all the other stuff about the money story and the DeFi story and the commerce story and all the rest. And so the underlying shift that we have is that there are now two different types of internets, and they're sort of diametrically opposed. They're built on different roots. And so the internet that we know and are familiar with is one that is where everything is free. You don't need to own anything because you can access anything you want: music, consumption, information, shopping, like all the frictions removed. But the interaction that you have with all this stuff is very feudal, in the sense that while you get to use it for free, you own none of it. And what you're really interacting with is a playground inside of a castle owned by some particular lord. And so if you listen to the visions of the metaverse from some particular companies, they will feel very feudal. They will feel like the structure where there's some sort of like disconnect or deception between the thing you're getting for free and the bargain that you're making. And then there's this other internet, which is emerging, which is Web3, that people are choosing because of their values. And this internet is wildly different and opposed. Its roots, its computational roots, are hyper-capitalist. Nothing is free. You get away with nothing for free. You have to own literally everything. Everything is tokenized, securitized, and financial. Even, anything you want to do costs you a gas transaction. And so you have this hyper-capitalist infrastructure, which enforces legal, not legal, but I would say economic and property rights. And then on top of this hyper-capitalist infrastructure, what we're starting to see is very heavy communalism. So not necessarily communism, but this idea of DAOs and decentralized autonomous organizations, where labor is the owner of the outcomes of these new software worlds, whether it's NFTs or whether it's platforms or exchanges and so on. And so tokens allow people to own the products that they use and incentivize people to build products for everybody else. And so you've got this sort of like labor movement on top of a software capitalist infrastructure, which again is completely opposed to this like consumption is free, but a feudal state that we're in now. And so what I would invite folks to think about is, in this new internet, what kind of economy is being developed? What is the native GDP of that economy? And then as that native GDP expands and continues to grow, what are the financial architectures and what are the mushrooms that come out of that soil that start to resemble things that we recognize? And then, of course, you can start talking about interoperability and connectivity. But I wanted to share that bit of a journey in terms of where we are today.
Okay, so that was a very interesting and provocative conversation. Thank you very much for this presentation, and I think you've touched on both something to think about over lunch, but also a theme that we'll pick up on towards the end of the day when we start thinking about blockchain and DeFi, as a business, as opposed to blockchain and DeFi as a nation. So thank you for introducing that thought. And we're going to now turn to our lunch break.